Hello and welcome to the Nonsense Chronicles. This is Doug Sashry with you today, and also I'm joined by
Rob Mendiola.
Yeah, and we have a special guest.
Very special.
Yes, Jordan Newman of Framing the Red. How you doing, Jordan?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, man. We're
Rob. Day.
Yeah, Rob just raced into the studio, man.
Yeah.
As quick as he could get here.
Sorry for the delay.
It happens.
Yeah.
And this is actual a re-recording since was Jordan our first ever podcast?
I think he was. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had some technical difficulties because of that being our first ever podcast, and maybe that'll be released posthumously after I pass away on the unreleased podcast. Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, Jordan, how you doing, buddy? What's going on?
Oh man, doing good. Just hanging out on a rainy, cold night in Louisiana.
That's right. We had all that, man. We dumped out of that, I think, was it yesterday? The day before yesterday, yeah. And, yeah. It's better. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and say it's better than 111 and dry. Not normally.
Oh, I agree. I'm not sweating, so I'll take it.
Yeah, that's a big plus.
That's right. Hey, man. So with the year wrapping up, and you've got the end of the year here and there shows. You're doing a little planning, I see, for 2024, aren't you?
Yeah, man. We got a lot of stuff coming in, a lot of good things getting on the books. So 2024 is going to be a year so far.
Yeah, then you have, I know you already booked a cruise, man. Tell us a little bit about that cruise.
So, over the years, we have become pretty good friends with a band called the Moonshine Bandits. And they called us and reached out to us. They are actually putting on what they call the Red, White, and Booze Cruise,
That's cool.
which is taken out of L.A. And I think we're going to Ensenada, Mexico, if I'm pronouncing that right. It's going to be like a 5-day cruise, and it's going to be us and the Moonshine Bandits and Bubba Sparks, and there's a couple of other artists on there. So it's going to be a really cool experience. I, for one, have never been on a cruise ship, so
cool.
I'm kind of excited about it.
That's good, man. Yeah, I'm just thinking with those cast of characters, if that ship might go missing at sea.
Huh.
I'm already pre-planning my personal flotation device.
There you go. Yeah, good thing.
That's good. Now, wait, did you say that cruise goes out of L.A.?
Yes, it does. It leaves out of Los Angeles.
Wow. Yeah, that's a different voyage. Yeah, because I have never personally never cruised because people like C.J. Pierce told me when I thought about getting on the Shiprocked cruise, like, man, that sounds like so. He just pulled me aside, Doug, patted me on the head because he knows my anxiety. He said, Doug, it's not for you, man. It's not for you.
It's not for me either.
Yeah, so, but, I know I'm going out of New Orleans, going out of Galveston.
Yeah.
And, a lot of them would end up in, I guess, somewhere. It's got to be Tampa somewhere because I know.
I'm sure, yeah.
Like Drowning Pool would end up there at the end of it, and then they'd take out New Orleans or Galveston and then end there. And then they do a show at House of Blues there. So, yeah, to take out of California, wow, I actually have never heard of that. I know it obviously has to happen. I know there's Northern Pacific cruises that go
so
to
then
Alaska.
y'all going to be hitting, I guess, the west coast of what Mexico would be, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Possibly,
we're going to be leaving out and doing some shows on the way, and then we'll get to L.A., get on the cruise ship, and then we'll do a couple of shows on our way back home.
Well, yeah, that's a good
That should be
idea.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, because you can clean. Yeah, you can make a nice little stops on the way back, and that's smart planning, man.
Yeah, man, got to pay those overpriced fuel prices out west.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know everybody that does that, man. They always plan that. Let's make some noise. Let's plan to make some noise on the way back, and they'll do that. Yeah, that's smart doing, man. So how's everything going, man? I think. Tell us a little bit about the who you're signed with and that story. I still find that very unique because I know they're traditional. They had a soul and R&B backing, But tell us a little bit about your record label that you're with, man.
So we're with Malico Music Group, which is one of the longest running independently owned record labels in the U.S. and has been owned by the same guys and family members since it started. And you're right, they were a very heavily influenced on blues, R&B, a lot of gospel. So when we signed with them, it was kind of something a little bit different, but they are based out of our hometown in Jackson, Mississippi. So to be a part of something that historical coming from where we come from is really cool. We were just kind of at the point in our career where we were shopping some things around, and we had, there's a lot of labels out there this day and age, and we had spoke with a few, and it just really wasn't anything we were interested in. And then we went and met with these guys, and they kind of took us in under their wing, and instead of it being so much of a business venture, it really became like a family. And so they've been awesome, man. They put out our last record, which was Mississippi Heat. They're going to be putting out our next record, which will be coming out early in 2024. And then they redistributed our first two albums for us. So they've opened up a lot of doors when it comes to the distribution side, getting us on like AMI jukeboxes and touch tunes and stuff like that. Stuff we couldn't have done without them.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, man. I've always been impressed by that story, because I think that's really unique, especially if you get I don't care who they are, but I get a record. I like the fact that they're independent; they can do what they want still, but the fact that they've had such a track elsewhere, a very historic track, and then they can go outside of that and sign these kids that were local. I think that's fantastic, man.
Yeah, no, man, they're a very homegrown label, which is kind of was good for us. They don't really get in our hair a lot. I mean, it's kind of like you guys write records and we'll back them, and they. Like I said, it's more of like a family. They don't really mess with us about our touring and stuff like that. Their job is, to get the music recorded and get it out. So, they're very good at what they do. We have great producers that work there. And like I said, man, it's one of those places where, we can go to them and say, hey, we have this idea. And, as long as it makes sense for everybody, they'll usually go for whatever we're kind of throwing out at them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And man, that's a tough thing. It's a tough thing during this industry, man, to even let alone find a label that's going to back anything you're doing, So, we're lucky on that aspect, man, because, record labels have become a lot of distribution. And, a lot of bands can do distribution themselves, but there's certain benefits if you've got a good label, that can help you.
Yeah, that's right. And, that's because you'll get a little bit more hands-on if you need the help, than you will with a big national that'll just plow right over you and not even see you, usually.
And you can focus on
right,
the music.
A lot of the big labels, a lot of the bigger labels wind up I guess you can call it shelving. I mean, the thing is when you're messing with a label that has these huge artists that are making them tons of money, they tend to not pay attention to these younger artists. And you see it happen all the time. You see these guys put one album out on some of these bigger labels, and then that's it. And that's because, well, there was no recoup off this record. With what we're doing, it's more of an investment for building. I mean, that's the thing is, any record labels, it's like throwing a dart at the dartboard. You hope you're hitting a bullseye, or you hope you get, something great. But a lot of times when a label doesn't see immediate results off of something, they kind of throw you to the wolves.
Yeah, they want to make an investment.
That's
profit,
right. Give us cash right away.
Returns.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and you see this with a lot of like even bands that were, had hits that got signed to big labels and then got dropped, and then they go back and they sign to these other labels, and they just never see the success that they saw, 15, 20 years prior. It's just, but the record industry has changed drastically, man, in the past, let alone 30 years, even in the past decade, it has changed so much.
Very much so, man. I would, we have a big problem in our company if somebody would come and mess with our intellectual rights. And, I do understand the musicians basically, you just here's a penny for letting us play your music on Spotify, and here's a penny for letting us play your music on iTunes or whatever. And I get what they're doing. There are some benefits for that, but man, like if the musician doesn't get out there and tour and sell merch, there's no money. It's
no money in albums. I mean, unless you're somebody like, you go to talking about artists that are like huge, like, Taylor Swift or Metallica or somebody like that. Of course, they're making money off of royalties and records, but they're selling, mass product, and they're getting astronomical amounts of streams, where your average musician, even signed to larger labels, you're right, money comes off of touring and merchandising.
Yeah, it does. And even a lot of the big ones, I guess you would have to turn some. I guess that you will get a little bit of leverage if you've got a ton. If you're a band like Shinedown, you'd kind of have to figure that they do have some leverage because they put out album after album and they've had a lot of success. But, when they start.
Oh, yeah, those guys are definitely making money. Now are they raking in, what some of these other artists, like again, go back to people like Taylor Swift, et cetera, stadium bands. Which, I mean, Shinedown does play some arena-style shows, bigger coliseums, things like that. So, I mean, yeah, of course, they're making money. I mean, their albums do very well. Their singles do very well. As far as active rock goes, I mean, those guys are probably one of the bands that are at the top of the list right now.
It just amazes me because, like I'm talking to, and what I meant by that a lot too was that's a band that started off in the era where it was really changing from like, here's a record contract to, we're going to basically eat all of that money to promote this album and to put you here. Well, wait, you got 20 cents left over, but now the things have changed quite a bit, and they're making a lot of money for that company, and I guess you would have a bigger say after, especially if you produce. It's not everybody can do that. Not everybody can have a album that comes out and get 4 or 5 nice hits off of each single one that you do. So that's a hard.
No, that's a hard thing for a lot of artists, man. You don't see that with every band, that's for sure.
No, and you've got to be able to. You have to have a good enough social media presence for any band these days. You definitely have to get out and promote yourself. That's something they didn't have before. They relied on the record companies to do, and believe me, the bands would charge back for it. But it is good now that y'all can do that for yourselves,
Right. No, it opens up some doors.
Well, how's Cody and Caleb doing these days?
They're good. They're good, man. Everybody's good. We're just, trying to get done with this. We're wrapping up everything with this new album, listening to mixes, listening to the, getting all the artwork ready. So, I mean, we've just been busy getting ready for shows and trying to finish up the rest of this year and get ready for next year. So it's just a never ending school bus ride, as I would put it, man. So like, you're wrapping up this year, but you're preparing for, all the stuff for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like the fact that you are dedicated to it, man. That's
all in.
Yeah. I mean,
you have to be.
He is.
Yeah, you're right. You put this many years into a project, which we've been around for 13 years, and you put that much time and effort into something, you're kind of at that point in your, love option, but is floating and it's making sense, you know what I mean? So I mean, we're lucky, man. We're a band that it's very lucky that we've even lasted, because a lot of bands don't make it this long.
Mm-hmm.
So we're lucky that we're still able to tour and we're still able to put out music and get out there on the road. So I mean, we're blessed, even though the industry sometimes is a massive headache.
Yeah, you're still getting to do what you love.
That's right, man. You get to do what you love. And it's getting harder, man. I'm gonna say this, dude. It's like the industry's not getting any easier. I'll say that. That's for sure.
No, but y'all stay, like I said, y'all are dedicated. Y'all are out every week, touring, you know, and then you get to the end of the year where you get some breaks, but y'all still throw in some shows at the end of the year every time. So,
Yeah, I got to keep that light bill on and keep some groceries on my table, man.
that's the only way that's going to happen, baby. And Christmas is coming up. That kid is going to expect something this year.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we're already speaking of Santa Claus and Christmas trees, and we haven't even got to Thanksgiving yet. So.
That's good, man. Well, give us a little bit about your background, man. Well, we've talked about it before, but to be honest, I can't even remember now. Where did your musical influence come from?
It's kind of a weird backstory. So I grew up in a family that was like non-musical at all. As a kid, I don't even remember my dad ever cutting the radio on in the car.
Wow.
So, I just kind of, I mean, we went to, my mom listened to some music, which was mainly like country. I remember like my first concert was George Strait, and I think that was in like 1996. But as I got older, I had friends that played guitar and stuff like that. So I kind of fell off into it. But then, you got to realize like at that point in my life, I was probably like 11 or 12 years old. I had no idea who half these bands out there were. I didn't know who the Beatles were or Led Zeppelins, or I didn't know any of that, man. It's just because I grew up not listening to music. And so I started playing a little bit of guitar, and just in high school, man, me and some other guys that played music got together and had a, high school band, and, wrote some songs, played some covers. And then as I got a little bit older, I really found my niche in writing lyrics. And that was where, I kind of honed in and got really comfortable and all that. So I started writing, and, but as far as like growing up in this, like, a lot of these folks grow up in a musical family or have some kind of musical background, man. I didn't, like I said, I didn't even know, if at 11 years old, if somebody would ask me who Motley Crue was, I'd have been like, I don't know, or Guns N' Roses. I didn't know who any of those bands were.
Wow.
That stuff just didn't exist.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that
It
is
was
strange.
crazy.
That is crazy.
And back at it now, it's even weirder because when I tell people this, they're like, I don't understand. And I was like, well, it was like, it's how I grew up, man. I was like, I think my mom like listened to the country music station locally to where we lived when we would get in the car and drive. But other than that, I just don't really remember much about music. I think the first memory of music that I ever had was when I was a kid, and I was probably, I may have been in first grade. I don't know. So like my dad had one of those leather cassette briefcases that you stuck your cassettes in.
Yeah.
And I could remember going in his closet, and I'm sure I was probably doing something I wasn't supposed to do, like looking for Christmas presents or something. And I find this, briefcase, and I open it up, and all these cassettes in there, and I'll never forget this. This story will stick with me for the rest of my life. I pull out this cassette, and I'm like looking at the cover of it, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And years later, I wound up listening to this record, and I was like really disappointed because the album cover versus the music was totally. And the first one was Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell.
Oh, yeah.
So, as a kid, you're looking at the cover to this Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell album, and it looks like it's just going to be like this gnarly, crazy music.
Heavy metal.
And then you put it in, and it's like, what is this? Like, I was totally lied to.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's some songs I love off of that, but yeah, it's not the it's nothing that insane, yeah.
No, man, it was like what I call like elevator rock.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I was like, what is this? And I was like, so man, that has stuck with me my entire life, that the first album cover I can ever recall seeing was Bat Out of Hell. And I thought it was just going to be this awesome, like, loud rock and roll. And then I put it in. Like, what is this?
Yeah, that would make I I would say that would make a great topic one day when we're just bullshitting about album covers we saw when we were really young and said, man, that looks better. And then, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're having that one Christmas present you really, really want, and then you open up Christmas presents and it's not there, and you're like, man.
Yeah.
That's how I felt that album cover. I was like, what just happened?
Yeah, I could see that, man. You know, look, there's two things I ever remember playing on the radio in my dad's car. One was Paul Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
And the other was Johnny Cash. And Cash stuck with me all these years, so I love that. Now, I also do remember that I remember this was 8-Tracks time, and I'll never forget he had a, almost said Buck Cherry. He had a Wild Cherry by, what was that? Play That Funky Music. Yeah, so I remember that. I remember that 8-track, man. I still remember that. But no, the Johnny Cash stuck with me. Yeah, that for all my life thus far, you know, that I don't remember my dad being a big musical person, but yeah, that's one thing I do remember is Johnny Cash. And I think the thing about Cash too is it doesn't matter what kind of music you like. Johnny Cash is pretty cool. He's his own.
Yeah, it's just good
music.
He's
his own damn genre, man. You know.
Right. No, he was a very genre artist. You know, as far as, you know, because you got to think about it. When he first came out, he was touring with, you know, guys like Elvis and Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis. When he definitely wasn't, you know, extreme rock and roll at the time, but I think he was, as the old saying goes, he was a little too, you know, rock and roll for country and a little too country for rock and roll. So he was just stuck kind of in this weird medium.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, which is, you know, that's funny. You know, and I still love listening to his stuff to this day, man. You know, so yeah. But what else you got going on, Jordan? I know you're pressed for time today. Can you give us any hints at next year, or you want to save the rest of it for a little bit so we can promote it later on?
Well, I mean, I know we've got the album that's going to be coming out early next year. We've got some bike rallies that we haven't done before that are in negotiations. We've got the cruise. You know, we'll always have, you know, our club dates like we always do. You know, so I mean, we've got some things going, man. You know, it's still kind of this last quarter of the year where everybody is moving kind of slow because that's how people are this time of year. Like, I don't know, I guess holidays and everything. But every time, this is like the worst time of the year for the music industry because everybody's kind of trying to slow down from this year and plan for next year. But we've got, like I said, we got the cruise coming up. We got a lot of stuff involving the motorcycle market. The new album coming out, and then we'll have new music videos to follow. So we just got, you know, we got a plate full so far, man. It's just, you know, getting everything locked up, and we steadily announce, you know, you can always follow us on Facebook or framingthered.com. We're on Instagram, bands in town, all that. And normally when dates are coming in, we're keeping our websites pretty up to date as we can announce stuff.
That's good. You know what we'll do is, because we are pressed for time on that today, what we will do is we'll have you on again next year right before you have that release.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and we'll promote it.
Rob,
what was that again?
So maybe you won't be late this time.
Yeah, I know, right?
No, just God.
Do you have the title name for your next album yet?
We're still kind of in limbo, man. We've got it narrowed down to a few things. You know, but we've got to make some decisions pretty quick. You know, I don't know, man. We're kind of at that point with this record. We want to do so many right things. And, you know, like, so it's kind of like, you want to pull the trigger, but you don't want to pull the trigger on this. Cause you know, like it's just hard, man. You're 4 albums in and you gotta, you know, every record you put out, you got to stay with, you know, you got to make sure it's up to par with everything you've done before. So it's really stressful.
It's more of a strategy than what you're saying.
Yeah, Definitely. When you start getting this far into the game and you've had success albums, you kind of got to make sure you're doing all those little things right to make
Yeah.
sure this album, can at least stay in line with everything else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That sounds good, man. And keep yourself safe, and we will chat again before you put that stuff out.
That sounds good.
Deal. We'll make sure we get it lined up, and I'll let you know when I find out. I'll drop you a little hint of when
Cool.
we're gonna release it. That way we can schedule this beforehand.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today, Jordan.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you, man.
guys for having.
You bet, man. You take care.
Thank you.